Good afternoon and welcome to the Legacy Guard. This is Draco Argentum joined by Taurus Crimson and Porglord.
Good,
Gentlemen, welcome.
good afternoon.
Afternoon.
We are here to discuss today Solo, a Star Wars story. We've all had the opportunity to watch it now that it's come out on video. And gentlemen, this as a brief summary on this video, this video was originally directed by Lord and Miller, who are known for their comedic works. However, probably 80% of the way through the filming, the heads over at Disney decided they didn't like the direction the film was going, and they replaced Lord Miller with Ron Howard. Ultimately, the movie came out in 2018, and it came out to less than stellar responses at the box office. Gentlemen, what were your thoughts on Solo, a Star Wars story? Taurus, would you like to begin?
Yeah, I've got to say it was a movie that I didn't want from the get-go. I mean, they had announced this, I think around 2012. George Lucas had already started the ball rolling on this. So this was actually a George Lucas idea, not a Kathleen Kennedy. And he had actually hired Lawrence Kasdan to begin writing the script. Now, this was in the early stages. And then once Disney bought the film, they pulled Lawrence Kasdan off to write episode 7. And so he, in turn, put his son Jonathan over the script. And so I don't know how many scripts Jonathan Kasdan has written before. I don't know if this is one of his first major works or if he'd done some TV. I don't know if you can look that up real fast for us, but um, I will say going into it with fairly low expectations based on what Lucasfilm had given us so far, I was pleasantly surprised. It was an enjoyable film to watch. It looked good. It felt like a space adventure, a heist movie. I didn't think that Alden Ehrenreich did a terrible job playing uh, young Han Solo. It didn't. It wasn't so bad that it took me out of the movie. I did have a hard time reconciling him as the Han that we meet later, but it's like, maybe this is maybe young Han was a little more optimistic and whatnot. Uh, I thought Lando did a good. Don Glover as Lando did a great job. It's good to see Chewie. It was cool to see the Falcon. Um, I felt like they tried to do a little bit much on one hand in the movie. It's like everything you know about Han. How he meets Chewie, the Kessel Run, how he gets the Falcon. I felt like they all kind of mushed that into one movie, but uh, so I felt like it was a little bit rushed on some of those scenes. But for what it was, I enjoyed it while I was watching it. But then as time went by, I found myself just really not thinking much about it after the first viewing. So I guess I didn't find it truly memorable, but you know, it was it was enjoyable. I'd give it like a B minus, I think. What about you, Poor Lord?
Uh, I think for me, kind of along the same lines. I mean, I was very nervous about what the movie was going to be like after we had seen the cinematic masterpiece that Last Jedi was. Um, I had some serious reservations, and especially since they had changed directors kind of midstream with the movie. That doesn't tend to work out very well for most movies when that happens, especially when the rumors were that Ron Howard had to basically go back and reshoot most of the movie that had already been done. But I mean, overall, I mean, I did enjoy the movie. Like you said, you kind of have to go into the movie knowing it's not Harrison Ford playing Solo, and you've got to get that into that mindset. But like you said, I think he did a very good job, kind of portraying the young Han. Um, It was a little confusing with kind of some of the early story with him on Corellia. I didn't know much of, even reading the old EU. There wasn't really much that I had read or seen kind of on his early days, other than you knew that he had been in the Imperial Academy. You know, and like you said, it did feel like they were trying to shove down a lot of what we did know about Han's early days into this movie. So it kind of felt like they rushed through some scenes since they were trying to cover everything. I did enjoy the fact, though, that you do get to see some new locations that we haven't been to before. I think the planet that he meets up with the other crew when he's on the ground and meets Chewie is Mimbarian or something like that. You do get to go to Kessel. You do get to see the Kessel Run. Again, it's always nice to get to see some new alien species. You get to see the Pikes, I believe, in the Pike, you know, in a live action shot for the first time. I would probably give it a B rating overall. Again, it was enjoyable. It was a little bit better than what I was expecting. But it just kind of felt like a typical kind of like, you know, heist movie. You know, it's like, you know, in a way almost like Ocean's 11 in space. You know, hey, I'm putting a crew together to go do this job, that kind of thing. So it didn't necessarily feel like something I hadn't already seen before, just kind of a different setting. Draco?
I shared a lot of your apprehension. When the news came out that they were replacing the directors, it was a matter of concern when that they had announced that Lord and Miller were making more of a buddy comedy movie rather than a Star Wars movie. So the concern at that point was high. The fact that they had to reshoot some 80% of the movie, that they had to bring in an acting coach for Alden Ehrenreich. I guess he couldn't get the comedic delivery. Oh, he couldn't get away from that interpretation that he'd invested so much of his work in up to that point. It was concerning leading up, and the reports that we got that that there weren't a whole lot of toy requests coming in specifically for Solo. It was all accompanied with something else. It was concerning, but having watched the movie, and I say this with fresh eyes. I finished watching the movie this morning, in fact. That it wasn't bad. Now there were some spots where where the logic kind of just immediately flips on me. No, we're not going to go stage a strike against the Pikes because we don't want to set up a feud between the factions. So, but wait, we can't be traced back to you. Oh, well then we'll consider this. Okay, yeah, let's do this plan, but I'm going to send this person who's my number 2 lieutenant who has our syndicate brand on her wrist for everyone and every camera to see with you because you guys need to stay anonymous and we can't have you tracked back to Red Dawn. Okay, that was a bit jarring for me to begin with. But there were only a few instances along this line. I like how Han Solo lost the original game to Lando Calrissian because Lando was cheating, and you had to be very quick to see his card device that he hid in his sleeve. However, it was kind of obvious for anyone who was looking. So in a region or in a game or in a syndicate where Sabat is so highly regarded, I imagine a lot of people would be looking for any means to cheat like that. I liked Woody Harrelson's character to a point. He didn't have any kind of he didn't change at all. He was definitely very flat. The Alden Ehrenreich character, Han Solo, I thought was decent. He seemed more Luke Skywalker-ish than anything. And given this interpretation of a young Han Solo, it gives a little bit more depth to the Episode 4, the original Star Wars Han Solo, where he's become jaded, and he's talking down to Luke that kid, you don't know what's out here, you don't know how the universe really works, you're really idealistic, but if you live long enough, you'll grow out of it. Overall, I thought the movie was pretty decent. The fact that they used the voice actor from Clone Wars who did Darth Maul to do the voice of Darth Maul in Solo, I thought was bonus points, brownie points on the part of Ron Howard and the producers. I wasn't impressed with Emilia Clarke's performance so much. She was not overly remarkable in the movie. Of course, I'm a fan from Game of Thrones, but I don't think that this particular performance in Solo, a Star Wars story, is going to be known as one of her more enduring works of acting. I would agree with, I would give it a B minus. I would not give it a solid B, but a B minus. It brought it in, but it wasn't outstanding. It wasn't, I would say, just slightly above average. So, gentlemen, if I may, what would you have liked to see from a Solo movie? Taurus, would you like to weigh in on that, sir?
What would I have liked to have seen? I guess I just felt like his time spent in the academy was a little rushed. I think I would have liked to have seen him fly a little bit before he got onto the Falcon. He wanted to become a pilot in the Empire. So it would have been nice to maybe see him doing a little flying, maybe learning how to fly the Imperial ships or the TIE Fighter. I don't know what type of flying he did. So it's kind of mysterious as to why he's so good at that. Like I mentioned earlier, it's just a lot of stuff going on that really got rushed over. So that the Chewie scene was pretty brief, but then again, I mean, I don't know how much you can add to that. The Millennium Falcon, the scene where he wins the Falcon was also, I mean, it kind of bookended the original sequence where they bet a ship earlier in the game, but it just kind of felt like an afterthought to me. But if I had to say one thing, I think it would have just it maybe spent a little bit more time on his journey through the academy. What do you think, Porg Lord? And if you guys keep going, I'm going to jet out for just a sec.
Sure.
I'd probably agree with that. It definitely did feel like they kind of just ignored the whole his time at the academy. You know, he signs up with the Empire, and then next thing you know, it's like 3 years later, and he's a ground trooper, which I mean, I guess to help further whatever story the story that they were going with, that probably helped. But like you said, I mean, the Han that we know, he's supposed to, we've been told that he's this incredible pilot and, can do all these amazing things. And you don't really get to see that a whole lot in the movie. And it seems like, I mean, he's got to get his chance somewhere, but it's just like the couple of times that he does kind of fly. It's like, well, we've got nobody else left to fly or that can fly this ship or whatever. So, well, I guess we'll put Han in there. So it didn't necessarily feel like, you don't get that feel of like, the Han that we know later that's, been told of, being this incredible pilot. And like I said, I kind of felt like I guess to try to go with that whole criminal underworld, just, with his background the way it was, I don't know. I felt like they could have done a little bit more there. And the whole, and I just, like you said, with Emilia Clarke's, her role, I just feel like that was almost like added as an afterthought. Like, oh, well, we can't have a bunch of dudes in this movie. We've got to have, at least one female in here, and we have to have this romantic, storyline. So it just feels like it was kind of forced in there a little bit. I would have been a little more curious to see too how Darth Maul's character fits into this whole Crimson Dawn criminal syndicate too. It was cool to get to see him again, but it just kind of felt like it was like, it's a little teaser and it just leaves you hanging there. Taurus or Draco.
I'd agree with that. It would have been nice to see more of his academy days. Now we find out that he's a grunt down, quote unquote, in the mud, because he was very outspoken during his academy days, and his instructors took offense to that. Now, I would imagine that if he was that outspoken, then he may never have seen the inside of a cockpit. They may never have given him access to actual live ships. It may have just been simulators he was stuck in. I agree. You don't ever see him pilot anything on his own aside from the land speeder at the very beginning that he boosted when he was trying to escape with Kira. Every other opportunity he has to fly, it's our 6-armed guy got shot in 2 shoulders. Our robot was blown up, our navigator was blown up, and Lando got shot as well. Well, Han, fly the ship. Now, Han flying the ship through the maelstrom was, I believe, that feat of flying in that storm was enough to cement his flying skills as being formidable. Now, again, as you mentioned, it does not explain how he got those skills. We don't have any montages from his days in the academy, but then you'd have to continue using a younger Aldrin Ehrenreich, whom we can now refer to as off-brand Solo, because he is Solo, just not the Solo you knew. Go ahead.
He's the great value brand Solo.
Yes, he is the great value brand Solo, for those who are familiar with Walmart. He is. Yeah. Anyhow, second thing that took me out of the movie. The first one was the biggest one was, well, we can't send Kira. We can't send anyone in who's affiliated with Red Dawn because because it'll tip off the Pikes that we're stealing from them. The second thing was Han Solo and Kira tried to smuggle themselves past the security checkpoint in the spaceport. Now, if the spaceport works anything like the airport, once you're past security, you are vetted. Therefore, you can go anywhere on the inside because you're vetted. So Han Solo goes up to the military enlistment office in the secure portion of the spaceport, goes up to the guy, "Hi, I want to join." The guy says, "What's your name?" He goes, "Han." Guy goes, "Han what? Who are your people?" He goes, "I have no people." Any security guard or anyone with 3 brain cells might go, "Well, you made it past security, so can I see your ID? Can I see, because you have to have a last name." No. Han, let's just make this Solo because, Latin exists in Star Wars.
Yeah, that whole scene was a little bothersome too.
Yeah. Mrs. Argentum was walking by as that scene came up, and she gave me the most deadpan face ever. And her exact words were, "That's how they gave him his name? Really?" So she was much against the viewing of Solo, a Star Wars story. But
I think part of that was Jonathan Kasdan's rookie nature in script writing. Did you end up looking that up or going over any of that?
we have not gone over it, but I did look it up. What do you know? John Kasdan wrote several episodes of Dawson's Creek.
Oh my God! Why am I...
And he had 1 episode of Freaks and Geeks. He had 3 episodes of Dawson's Creek, as 4 episodes actually. Wrote In the Land of Women, the first time, and a solo Star Wars story, and he is now listed as he is announced as writing the screenplay for the untitled Indiana Jones project.
Yeah.
So
he went from doing Dawson's Creek to writing a Star Wars movie, and that's the kind of state we're in right now.
That's right. He would fit in, as I understand it, quite well with Kathleen Kennedy's story group, right?
With her, yeah, with the ladies in the story group, he'd fit in right well in a number of ways. But I think his inexperience showed in this script. That also bothered me, the way he got his name. That was just kind of an eye roll for me. But what did you, and you might have gone over this while I was stepped away, but did you come to a consensus on your L337 thoughts, or?
I had not actually. L337, I had come into this movie expecting that L337 was going to be the Trollbot, because L337 is the word leet in leak speak, which is, of course, gamer speak. Therefore, I assumed that that Leetbot or Troll would be a Trollbot, and I was trying to figure out the nature of this Trollbot. I was unimpressed with the Trollbot. It did not seem very memorable. She did not stand out. She was only really a part of two major scenes, and that was the very beginning when they're leaving after the card game. She's throwing a tantrum about the bot battles, and then when they're doing the mission on Kessel, staging the robot rebellion. Aside from that, she really didn't do anything. She had maybe one conversation with Kira aside from that, and in which she was complaining that she thought that Don Glover would have had a crush on her, but she wouldn't let it happen because he's not her type.
Well, did you get the sense that they had been intimate before based on the dialogue?
Actually, no. Based on the dialogue, Amelia Clark's like, "How would that even work?" And she's like, "Oh, it works." But I mean, it's not like she was hinting that he'd been using her as a toaster or anything. So
Right. I also feel like it wasn't. I think had for those who don't know, the week before the movie aired, John Caston had made the comment that Lando was pansexual, and I think that just really um, hit the Bible Belt and probably a lot of Star Wars dads the wrong way, and they were like, "I'm not taking my son to go see this movie where they're making the robots gay." So I think, having seen the movie now, that I think that was a little overstated, and I really didn't get that sense from watching it. Similar to the Beauty and the Beast remake, where a lot of people were upset about Gustan's side man. What was his name?
LaFou.
Yeah, of him being gay, and a lot of people were in an uproar. And I watched that movie as well, and didn't even understand what the fuss was about. So I think his comments, more than anything, damaged the box office there. So L337 was the most annoying character in any Star Wars movie. I will say that. I couldn't stand the character, and I actually laughed out loud when she got ripped apart. And then the irony of her being slaved into the Falcon, I thought, was also hilarious.
See, the L337 scenes, as I mentioned, didn't really stand out that much to me. Pork, what were your thoughts on L337?
I hadn't even really heard anything about I mean, I'd seen the name and it was, just kind of an eye roll, like you said, with the elite speak. And I hadn't really heard anything about what Krasn had come out and said until Torres had said something to me a couple days before I went to see the movie. And it just kind of had me scratching my head a little bit. And seeing the movie, like, it said there's the one scene that she has where she's talking to Kira about it, and it was like, okay, well, this seems a little kind of weird, but like, I mean, all their other interactions, like, never even about it unless someone had said something like that before I went to see the movie. I feel like I mean, for the most part, it was, kind of much ado about nothing. It just was, I think I'd said it before. It's like we've said it before. It's like someone just trying to insert their political view, just kind of randomly into the movie to make it, try and make it, some sort of political scene with it. And it did need to be in there, and it didn't even really there wasn't anything really in the movie to affect that, or even kind of, give them that leg to stand on even saying that.
No, I think Jonathan Kasdan was just trying to get woke points, and it ended up backfiring. Because had he not said anything, going to see the movie, nobody would have even thought anything about it. In fact, I thought that scene was pretty funny, to be honest. So I think it was just a dumb thing to say.
I would agree. It seemed to me that the scene between Kira and L337, it was mainly L337 first was calling out Kira for being a member of Red Dawn and yet leading on Han Solo because he was clearly head over heels for her. But then afterwards, she's like, "Yeah, and I don't know what I'm going to do about my situation either." Honestly, L337, the personality in that droid was unstable, and I think this was just showing that this was just another example of how this droid had an unstable personality. That, oh yeah, obviously don't obviously he's head over heels for me as well, but I won't let it happen. It's
Let me ask you guys this. Obviously, with the box office numbers, the blame is going to be on fatigue, um, whatever else they want to throw the blame on.
Russian robots.
The Russian bots, whatever. So, two-part question. I'll throw this over to Porg. Part one, why do you think the box office was so low? And part two, if it hadn't been so low, would you be interested in seeing more solo films?
I think a lot of as far as the numbers being low, I mean, I don't think it was necessarily fatigue. I think a lot of it was just, the backlash, and we've said this, everybody said this before, it was the backlash over Last Jedi, that there was such hate and discontent coming out of that movie that I don't think, no matter how good or how bad Solo could have been, it would have mattered. I think that just the consensus for most of Star Wars fans coming out of that movie was, we've gotten two movies now that, one movie that we were indifferent towards, and now we have one that we absolutely, for the most part, hate. We need to do something to punish Disney for, and a lot of eyes ruining the franchise, and the best way to do that is to hit him in the wallet, because money talks. So I think a lot of that was directed towards Solo, unfairly, in some ways. We've talked about this before. It was kind of baffling, the fact that they had this movie coming out in May instead of the typical December releases that they've had for the Star Wars movies. I kind of feel like if they would have had a December release, I think the box office numbers probably would have been a little bit better, not like spectacular. But I think another 6 months would have given a lot of people time to cool down a little bit.
Right, but like you've said, that has nothing to do with fatigue. That has to do with just the pure anger based on Last Jedi. I mean, that's only 5 months later. I mean, I'm still mad about Last Jedi, and it's been almost a year. So, I mean, that was just it was almost adding insult to injury doing it so quickly.
I think the fatigue is just Iger. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. I think, obviously somebody at Disney or Lucasfilm has realized that mistakes have been made. Something needs to be done to right the state of the Star Wars franchise. I think it's just kind of a cover story, because they don't want to be like, oh well, yeah, we fucked up, we need to do something about it. You're always going to try and pass blame somewhere else, so they're gonna sit there and give the fatigue remark, which we don't buy. We talked about that the other day, because Marvel's been putting out 2 or 3 movies a year for the last few years, and I don't think there's any fatigue anywhere in any of their movies. It's they're putting out for what Marvel is, they're putting out quality movies, you know, that for the franchise, if fans of the franchise are enjoying. It's not happening for Star Wars. So I like I said, I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction.
I agree. I think had the movies been quality, and there are so many stories you could tell, both from legends or original stories that, I mean, I think they could get away with doing 3 movies a year and having people go and enjoy them. I think it's just it's an embarrassing excuse to hear that. And like you said, Marvel's doing just fine. Given it is a different type of franchise, but I still don't think it should matter. I think if you're putting out a quality product, that the quantity shouldn't matter.
I'd agree. Something that hasn't been brought up yet. The very first movie that the new Disney Star Wars brought out was The Force Awakens, and that was the movie in which Han Solo dies. So really going with a solo Star Wars story probably is a misstep, following even shortly on the heels of the movie in which Han Solo dies. Who's Han Solo, Dad? I thought he died in The Force Awakens. Yes, son, he did die in The Force Awakens. Why are we going to go see a movie about this dead guy, Dad? Well, I don't know, son. Why don't we go see something else instead?
Well, I think some of it is, it's, you know, Rogue One was, you know, the first standalone movie. It's a story that most Star Wars, you know, fans, we already kind of, you know, we know somewhat of the story. It's something familiar to us. So, you know, they're stepping out, trying to tell an original story, but in a way it's kind of a safe way of doing it, because again, it's a story that we kind of know, but they can expand upon it, you know, and make it their own. And I kind of feel like it's the same thing here with Solo. Is everybody, you know, there's so many, you know, we all love Han Solo. So for them to make a standalone movie for just a character, again, they're trying to go with the safe bet, and it just didn't work out this time.
It would have been so much easier though, and to make an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie. I know that even Lucas had been thinking about doing a solo origin movie, but I mean, it had been just a matter of a couple of years since this character had been killed off, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi has been dead since the original movie, but he still lives on as a Force ghost. So he's not even really dead to us. He's still an active character in our imagination. For those people who have been really diehard fans of Han Solo over the years, to kill him off in one movie, then ruin his legacy, and then bring him in this other movie as something different, something not quite the same. A lot of people felt it was a personal affront. And so a lot of people who had the biggest complaints about Solo, I do believe, are the people who had the biggest complaints about The Force Awakens, and they were the people who were upset about having the character Han Solo changed and undermined. What are your thoughts?
So, you know, I don't know as far as that goes. I could see it either way. I just think it was a perfect storm against this movie, and I think that sure that could play a role in it. I honestly think The Last Jedi plays 85% in this, and then the remainder of it is really Kasdan's remarks. I don't know that has a whole lot to do with it. I don't know. What do you think, Borg?
I think a lot of it is, I think the bulk of it is Last Jedi backlash. And you know, like Draco says, I mean, it did baffle me that when they announced that this was going to be the next movie, you know, it's like, you know, it's why, you know, we already have, for the most part, any backstory that we need for Han Solo. You know, we had talked about this. So, you know, we always had thought that a Kenobi, if they were going to do just, you know, kind of an origin story, you know, Kenobi would have been better. I think it would have probably done um, a lot a lot more for the fan base than this, but I still think it's just them trying to play it safe. You know, they don't have any direction, so they're trying to take these kind of safe bets, and it hasn't worked for them.
Well, let me throw this out there. I mean, what Star Wars has that's different from everyone else is the Force, the spiritual aspect of the Force, and the Jedi. This is the second standalone film to not include any of that. Now, Rogue One worked, I think, because it is such a fan favorite. Everybody knows that story from the crawl, but um, I'll start with you, Draco. Do you think a Star Wars movie without Jedi and without the Force is going to be that much different from any other sci-fi that we see out there?
Well, I don't think that Solo stood out very much. It didn't stand out as a Star Wars movie because it lacked the Force. Now, I will say the Rogue One had the Temple of the Wills, was it? The Kyber Temple, where you met Donnie Yen and the Guardians. Was it the Guardians of the Wills?
I believe that's what they were calling themselves. Yes.
Yes, and you heard Donnie Yen multiple times. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I am with the Force. You heard him several times, and he was blind, and he was using martial arts to fight off these stormtroopers and other individuals. So it might be easy to use your head canon to think that he might have been Force sensitive to a point. That's beside the point. He was kind of your stand-in Jedi in that movie. He didn't claim to be a Jedi, but he possessed this greater wisdom. He could sense the Kyber crystal that Jyn Erso carried. So the idea is that he kind of was your stand-in for a Jedi in that movie.
I
You know,
agree. He really did seem to exemplify kind of what a Jedi was. And also, something else Rogue One did was that they were the first to pull in a cartoon character into live action.
that's correct. Saw Gerrera.
Indeed.
So
Which
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, which when that happened, I was really excited because I thought that was going to be indicative of the future, but it doesn't seem like it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that that moving forward, you only have a limited number of force capable individuals that you know of in the prequel preceding the original trilogy. So if you try to continue putting more Star Wars stories in the past, I don't know. I don't know who you're going to follow up with. If you did try to go with an Obi-Wan origin story, then you're going to have uh, Qui-Gon Jinn in it at some point, unless you want to pick it up from where Obi-Wan is hanging out in the desert waiting on Luke to grow up.
Well, but even then, you might have to have Qui-Gon Jinn in it because that's supposed to be at the point where he learns how to become Force Ghost.
That's true. So you'd have to have Liam Neeson reprising his role as Qui-Gon Jinn.
And I think another thing that Solo really kind of missed out on that you usually have in all the Star Wars movies up to this point is some sort of kind of spectacular space battle, which you don't really have in Solo. You have the whole scene through, when they're trying to escape Kessel, which was kind of cool, but again, you don't have your big ships flying around, and there's not turbo lasers, and ion blast flying through space either. So
it was a series of heist scenes. It was the attack. I mean, the most laser fire you saw was on the train heist in the very beginning of the movie.
Right. Well, I mean, you get a little bit there, kind of when they're on the one planet where he meets Chewie and stuff. I mean, you get a little bit of ground combat there. So I mean, that was sort of kind of intense for about 5 minutes.
But that's not a Star Wars.
No.
That's a planet war.
Yeah. I mean, it was an okay heist movie. It just wasn't a good Star Wars movie.
Well, you might want to be getting used to that, not having space battles, because now that Rian Johnson's introduced the hyperspace one-shot, I don't know where they're going to go from here. I'm
I would.
sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. I don't let it be mistaken. I have the same dissatisfaction with The Last Jedi as anyone. The Last Jedi did the entire series a great disservice. Solo coming up after The Last Jedi never stood a chance. Solo could have been the best made Star Wars movie ever, and it still would have done poorly at the box office because of The Last Jedi, A, and John Kasdan's comments, B. Fortunately, Twitter posts are not canon. So unless someone comes out and says Twitter posts are canon, we can ignore the fact that John Kasdan said that Lando Calrissian is pansexual. He's Pando Calrissian. So he can still be the Lando Calrissian of your cherished memory. Unfortunately, the next Star Wars movie we have coming out is going to be Episode 9, and I have the same feeling. If Episode 9 could be the best movie ever made, it's not going to have a great box office showing because of the damage done to The Last Jedi and the so-so. I mean, Solo, I want to say, is a decent movie, but it's not standout. It's not remarkable. It's not going to, in 20 years, you're not going to go, I have some nostalgic feeling for that Solo movie again. You're going to be thinking about your original trilogy.
I quite agree. It's not one that you're going to be digging out every time you do a rewatch.
No, it's going to be, that's that one with where you had the other Han Solo. Yeah, we can skip that one. The Episode 9 is going to be focusing on mediating most of the damage that was done in The Last Jedi. Ultimately, for Lucasfilm, this new trilogy, the post trilogy, is just it's going to be a wash. They're not going to be able to ride this to success. The efforts that J.J. Abrams is putting in right now in Episode 9 is going to be to try to mend the bridges that were burned down by Rian Johnson in his pyromaniac-like glee of joy. That didn't make sense. Anyhow.
No, it did make sense, and you're absolutely right. Episode 9 is damage control. That's all it is, and it's unfortunate because I know I have no interest in seeing it whatsoever. Not only is the sequel trilogy ruined for me, Star Wars the franchise has been cheapened for me based on some, just like we were talking about earlier, like the one shot hyperspace. How do you even go forward from here? It's just so bad that the entire era after Return of the Jedi is damaged for me, and I know to an extent you guys as well. And we are such a small number. I mean, this is out there in the world, guys. This is the majority of fans. Is how we feel. So I think you're right, Draco. The box office for 9 is not going to be stellar. I think it's going to do more than Solo, but I would be surprised if it hit 750 million.
I think it depends primarily on this. Not the first week. I think it's going to be low. If the movie is really good, and if J.J. Abrams does enough to mediate this damage, then you're going to see a strong second week showing where people are going to come back and say, "Hey, they fixed this, and they fixed this. The movie was decent. They fixed these things that Rian Johnson broke." And people are going to say, well, if they fix these things, then I will go see it. So your second week showings are going to tell one way or the other how well that movie will do overall. That's my prediction.
I would agree with that. I think you're spot on. I think they're going to let the brave ones go forward and check it out, and then kind of wait and see. I'm not even decided yet on whether or not I'm going to go see this in theaters. Solo was the first movie that I've been old enough to go to and have not gone to, and I just, as of right now, I just really don't care, and I'll probably wait for Porglord to take off work early and go see it, and then see what he says.
Yeah, I'll go see it. I mean, it won't be any opening weekend kind of thing, but I have to continue on the fine tradition of seeing all of them in the theater that I can. So,
Are you saying that you're going to use him as your guinea porg?
Wouldn't be the first time.
And it won't be the last, sir.
All right, gentlemen. I think we've said all we need to say. Taurus, do you have anything left to add for Solo: A Star Wars Story?
No, in closing, I will say I am very sorry for Ron Howard and for the crew that worked on this movie. I do think it was a good movie. It was a fun movie. Wasn't anything to write home about, but I'm disappointed for them, and especially for Ron Howard, because I do have a ton of respect for him and his work. And it's unfortunate that the actions and the decisions of others were taken out on his movie, and I hate to see that. But you got to speak with your wallets, and I think without the bomb that Solo was at the box office, I don't think we would have seen as much or any change in the way things are being done. Porg?
I'd agree with you there. I mean, it something needed to be done to try and right the ship over there. It was just unfortunate it happened to, go negatively against, like you said, Ron Howard and all the cast and crew that worked on this movie. But hopefully, we have spoken, and it seems like at least somebody over there is trying to listen. So we'll just have to see what kind of new products we can get.
Well, I agree. I feel really bad for Ron Howard. If anyone has not seen it yet, I advise you to go out and look for Ryan's Boat. It's a little web comic that tells a tale about a boat by a man named Ryan, and how the quality of his boat um, lingered in the minds of the potential buyers and ruined the sales of a perfectly fine boat that came up afterwards by a man named Ron. In looking at Ron Howard on Box Office Mojo, I found that as a director, Han Solo, even as low as it grossed, which as of the information I'm showing here on this, was showing a lifetime gross of $213 million as a lifetime gross. That was his third highest grossing movie overall, following The Da Vinci Code, which had 217,000, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which had a lifetime gross of 216 million, and then 260 million as his highest grossing movie.
I would have thought both of those would have had higher turnouts.
Well, it seems that it was his. I do believe it was his highest opening, because it opened with $84.4 million, whereas the Da Vinci Code opened with 77 million, and the Grinch opened with 55 million. But it was that lifetime gross was the big kicker.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. I just wanted to ask real fast. I don't think we ever got around to it. Porg, had this series been continued, would you have been interested in seeing this Han do more movies? Han and Lando, would you have been interested in seeing that if they not canceled them?
As far as the act, Danny Glover and I can never say his name.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah. As far as seeing them play these characters, I probably would have. It would have just depended on who the writer of the movie, the screenplays for the next movies would have been.
Fair enough.
I would agree with Porg Lord. I would be up for seeing more Han Solo and Lando Calrissian from these actors. I would be okay with that. More Chewbacca as they go and meet Jabba the Hutt and begin to get in over their head with the Hutt family on Tatooine.
And I agree with both of you. I think it's unfortunate that the blame is being put on fatigue or Solo itself or whatever, because if the blame was being put squarely where it needs to be, which is on The Last Jedi, I think they could greenlight another Solo movie, and I think it would do fine at the box office. I personally want to see this group of characters continued their adventures. I would be interested, as long as they could improve upon what they've laid down on already. But I think that there was a future there, and I think it's unfortunate that we're not going to see that. That's all I've got.
I think we're all in agreement. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone, thank you for joining us on this review of Solo, a Star Wars story. If you enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe. Please leave a comment below. And as always, be kind to one another.
Live long and prosper.
May the Force be with you.